To one of our top stories today, a chilling new warning purportedly from ISIS claiming dozens of fighters are already here on American soil, ready to strike at a moment's notice. In the meantime, the FBI is sifting through a digital trail of evidence left by one gunman in the Texas attack and a known ISIS recruiter. So what does this all mean for our security today? Let's bring in Tom Johnson, Senior Fellow with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies and Senior Editor of the Long War Journal. So the purported claim by ISIS online, 71 soldiers in 15 different states. Do you buy that, Tom?
Well, I think they have supporters probably in all 50 states. We saw earlier this year the FBI Director James Comey came out and said that the FBI is investigating individuals of suspected radicalization in all 50 states. So we know they have supporters probably all throughout the country. The question is, do they have trained operatives or guys who actually went overseas and received training and came back in all these states? And the answer there is probably not. I would think they probably do have some probably who are in the country, but I don't think they have necessarily the number that they're advertising.
Often when we see an attempted attack or an attack like the one that we saw on Sunday, we look for these connections back to quote-unquote major terrorist groups, whether it's ISIS or Al-Qaeda. What difference does that make? If the ideology is somehow inspiring these sorts of attacks, why does it matter who's connected as far as the larger group?
Well, the ideology is definitely the root cause of the problem. However, what we see over time is that, in general, individuals who make contact with professional terrorist organizations, they receive training on how to fire their arms or use light arms, make bombs, that sort of thing. In general, they're more of a threat to our security here at home than these individuals who are sort of radicalized online or something along those lines, mainly because they don't have the training to go out and do as much damage as a professional terrorist would. One
of the things that you do so well at the Long War Journal is you really watch what's being said online. Have you seen any great reaction to what happened in Texas? And how do you determine the difference between simply social media boasting, for lack of a better term, and some really serious threats that could be impacting us here at home?
Well, you know what ISIS is great at doing is using social media boasting to fuel the threats. That's really the problem here. They really have mastered social media in this internet age of basically getting new recruits, finding people to adopt their message, and then carry out acts of terror. The difference is, I would say, their boasting is important. They're clearly boasting on this. We haven't detected yet any sort of concrete ties between the shooters in Garland, Texas, and ISIS operatives. However, there are some indications that on social media they had made contact, and that's important in and of itself.
We are focusing so much on ISIS today, obviously. What about Al-Qaeda? One of the things that we've discussed over the last several weeks and months is, while there is so much focus really on ISIS, that no one's really talking about Al-Qaeda. And we have seen indications that Al-Qaeda is also interested in a more serious attack in the heartland of America. What about that?
Well, it's interesting. Both Al-Qaeda and ISIS are marketing this idea that you can attack the supposed blasphemers. Anybody who is sort of committing blasphemy against Islam, or anybody who is sort of speaking ill of the Prophet Muhammad, the way they define it. So they're both marketing that sort of thing. What they're trying to do is build moral legitimacy for their terrorism. And so what Al-Qaeda, ISIS, they both want to do is encourage their supporters and followers to go out and commit terrorist attacks against anyone who is accused of blasphemy. And that's an important thing. We saw earlier this year with Charlie Hebdo, the attacks in Paris. That was an Al-Qaeda attack. It was claimed by Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. They gave money, financing, training to fuel that attack. And that's sort of what we're talking about here. Those guys have received professional training, and so they were much more lethal in Paris than, fortunately, these guys in Garland, who so far we don't see any indication they received real training.
But you're not ruling out the fact that that still is perhaps happening. You mentioned the FBI director saying, listen, we're on this for all 50 states. Obviously, there's been some oversight. Local law enforcement was ready for this. That can't always be the case. How do we best protect ourselves?
Well, the FBI and other agencies, they can't bat 1,000. There's going to be guys who slip through the cracks. I think the important thing here is they've obviously stopped a lot of plots. They've shut down a lot of guys who were radicalized, who had bad intentions, basically. The real fear to my mind is that somebody who sort of slips under the radar, who really has received this training, who can do damage, that's really the guy who I think we're going to end up talking about, and that's what I worry about.
And sifting through it and finding that one individual that has the better training and the support.
Right.
Interesting. Tom, great to have you on set as always.
Thanks.
John?